Well, the northern European country of Latvia has been a NATO member for 2 decades now. It was once a former Soviet Union member and now finds itself on the front line bordering Russia.
CNA's Carolyn Malone caught up with Latvian President Edgars Rinkēvičs on the sidelines of the NATO summit for a wide-ranging conversation. Now, she began by asking him what it would take to stop the war in Ukraine, and Europe's largest since World War II.
Well, indeed, the war is raging for 2.5 years, but let's not forget that when the full-scale invasion started, there were predictions that Ukraine is going to surrender in 3 days or 3 weeks. Why they are fighting? Because of their will, because of their understanding that there is no alternative for their independence, and also because of the support that they have been given by the Western countries. I wouldn't exaggerate the level of support, but I don't want to downplay the support that we have given so far. At this point, I would say that it is very critical that NATO countries do commit their resources, do commit themselves to continue helping Ukraine, and also that those countries that have restrictions on the use of weapons provided to Ukraine lift those restrictions. I think those are two elements. Is this a winning strategy? No. Why? Because I think that the strategy would be if we all clearly state that the victory of Ukraine is regaining its territorial integrity, that the victory for Ukraine is ultimate membership in NATO and in the European Union, and of course also militarily defeat of Russia so that it cannot threaten any of the neighboring countries in considerable future.
Latvia is among the countries that spends the most on defence as a percentage of GDP among NATO allies, up there with Poland, United States, etc., spending more than 2%, that framework 2%. What is your message to allies who don't spend that amount? Is that a critical part of this conversation?
Absolutely. Well, my message is very simple. Spend at least 2% of GDP, but let's face it, 2% is not enough. There are discussions about the need to spend at least 2.5% of GDP in the future. However, I'm quite realistic. I think that, first of all of us need to implement what has been decided a long time ago, back in 2014 during the Vilnius summit, and that's 2%. It's also about real capabilities that need to be developed. Money needs to be invested in capabilities, in development, not only used just as the kind of social program. I think this is also something that is very important. My country, Latvia, is spending, at this point, the projection was 2.4. I think that by the end of this year we will reach 3% because there have been additional investments.
And how about concern over China? Increasingly we hear NATO allies speaking about the support that China is giving to Russia. There are Indo-Pacific allies of NATO who are going to be present later this week in Washington, D.C., among them South Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand. What kind of cooperation would you like to see with those allies and NATO?
This is already good tradition because already in 2022, during Madrid summit, there was a special session with our Indo-Pacific partners. And we were discussing a lot of issues that we have in common and the common interest. It's of course currently very difficult to make any prediction how the geopolitical situation is going to develop in about a year or so. But I think that the fact that Indo-Pacific partners have voiced, and not only voiced, but also practically supported Ukraine, that they understand that Ukraine is to some extent litmus test for everyone in the world, and if countries that are revisionists do believe that they can get away with launching the war, grabbing the territory, committing all those atrocities, then of course the international law and order as we know it is going to disappear. And I think that this is something that we do understand. China is, of course, a very important country when it comes to global order. It is a very important country also, and unfortunately we don't see that it is using its influence to stop the war in Ukraine, because I do believe that if there would be a very strong message from China to Russia, stop it, if there wouldn't be any kind of support that Russia is getting, most probably Russia would not be able to continue the war. I think that we would be ending, or that war already would have ended months or even, we can now say, years ago. Fortunately, we don't see that. And from that point of view, I think that we should treat China as a very serious global actor. We need to work with them, but we also need to forge a very good working relationship, and I think that we are on the way with those countries in the region that share our values, share our attitude to the global order. So it's not an easy task.
So Hungary's just taken over the presidency of the EU Council, and the Prime Minister has also visited China just recently and Russia and Ukraine on a so-called peace mission. What is your reaction to this trip, and do you think it's helpful?
EU member state becomes the presidency for 6 months. It does not have much role in EU's foreign policy. That is for the High Representative, for the Foreign Affairs Council of the European Union. The presidencies normally organize the work of other countries except Foreign Affairs Council. And from that point of view, we do believe that we should treat this visit as a bilateral diplomatic effort. I don't see any positive results. Actually, just a couple of days after Prime Minister Orban visited Moscow, we saw this horrendous attack of Russians against Children's Hospital in Kiev. The Children's Hospital where many children with cancer have been treated. And I think that, frankly, Russia and Putin doesn't care about those peace initiatives at this point. I do believe Russia is currently waiting for the end of this year. I think that they want to see how US elections are going to end. They want to see what is going to be the composition of the new European Commission. Definitely they will try to advance as much as possible in Ukraine, but we see that Ukraine is fighting back, and here I would say thanks also to $60 billion package that was approved by the Congress. However, I don't believe in such peace missions, especially if nobody has asked actually for that peace mission.
President Biden is the current leader here in the United States. There's been a lot of focus on his health recently. Are you concerned, and what are you looking for from the president this week?
Well, I would say that NATO summit is dedicated to many pressing issues. And of course, now being here in the United States, I have a bit of feeling that almost every head of state or government or defense or foreign minister is being treated as the medical expert. We are not. Sorry, I leave that debate exclusively for US public to decide. I do believe that we are going to have a very good discussion at NATO summit. We are also going to have a special session with President Zelensky of Ukraine. So there is plenty of work to do, and I trust that each and every head of state and government will contribute to that discussion, and we will be able to decide on a very important topics. But normally we do not comment on internal politics of any of NATO member states.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, President Edgar Rinkevich.